Hi, everyone. On April 15th, 1912, as the Titanic was sinking into the icy depths of the North Atlantic, the story of one heroine, American socialite and philanthropist Margaret Tobin Brown, emerged. Known as the unsinkable Miss Molly Brown, because she helped in the ship's evacuation, Mrs. Brown took an oar herself in her lifeboat and urging the lifeboat crew to go back and save more passengers. Her urgings were met with opposition from Quartermaster Robert Hitchens, the crewman in charge of lifeboat number 6. Hitchens was fearful that if they were to go back, the lifeboat would either be pulled down due to suction or that those in the water would swamp the boat in an effort to get in. And so, after several attempts to urge Hitchens to turn back, Brown then threatened to throw him overboard. She understood that in the face of a crisis, the greatest danger is not the threat outside, but the feeling of being abandoned in order to contend with it. History is filled with episodes of big moments, of miraculous turns of events that seem to line up just right to advance the victor to center stage and humble the challenger to the abandoned dustbin of time. However, in truth, these magic moments are actually built on the backs of people who will not let others go through trying challenges alone. This idea, that of not abandoning your fellow man in crisis, is apparent in the dramatic stance that Yehuda takes when approaching the Viceroy Tzafnas Paneach to plead, to bargain, and even threaten, as he advocated for Binyamin's release. In fact, Rabbi Yehuda Shaviv notes that when our Parsha opens with the words Vayigash love Yehuda, that Yehuda approached him, the him was actually a reference to Binyamin in that Yehuda went to stand alongside his brother. He had come a long way from washing his hands of a different brother, Yosef's plight, when he proposed selling Yosef to the Ishmaelim via Denu al Tibo so as not to actively participate in the matter. In fact, in the interim, he had become the leader and the guarantor who was sent ahead to establish the yeshiva and the settlement in Goshen as a result of the responsibility that he took for Binyamin and for the family. Yes, through his actions, Yehuda demonstrated tremendous, great leadership skill. Yosef, too, seems to find a tremendous sense of personal acharayos, of personal responsibility in his actions as well. As the original priest sold Yosef, he felt responsibility for the missteps he perceived in his brothers and brought their actions to his father, and now as viceroy, he had arranged to provide sustenance to the entire Fertile Crescent through a rough famine, while also not taking personal liberties in the process. And when it came time to take care of his family, he had them brought to Goshen. Yosef took a hands-on approach in order to protect them from the assimilation potential in Mitzrayim, as he selected proper brothers to represent the family and instructed them in exactly what to say to be safe in a Goshen world apart. Yosef, too, like his brother Yehuda, demonstrates leadership and heroism. But what makes a hero? Where does one get the ability to withstand the outside pressure and make his or her commitment to fellow human beings unsinkable? I believe it's not based on the boat that one finds himself in, but rather on the turn of the wheels and the wagons. Let me explain. As Yosef sends the brothers back to tell Yaakov that he is indeed alive, Yaakov still remains in disbelief. Only when he saw the agalos, the wagons that were sent to bring him and the family down, only then did Yaakov accept that Yosef was alive. Why were the wagons the last straw? What was it about them that allowed Yaakov to accept the incredible news? Rashi highlights the fact that the wagons reminded Yaakov of the last topic that he and Yosef had last discussed, that of Egla Arufa, of the decapitative calf, who was offered as atonement for the members of a city that's closest to a place where a victim of murder is found, and the perpetrator can't be caught. Now, aside from the similarity in the phonetic pronunciation of the words for wagon, agala, and for a calf, egla, there's actually no connection between them. So why would a wagon remind Yaakov of the last lesson that he studied with Yosef? And moreover, if both Yehuda and Yosef get the message of leadership, why is Yehuda rewarded with his commitment to his fellow Jews with ultimate leadership and the Davidic line, while Yosef's rule remains temporary? And by the way, what does this have to do with the rowing of a boat anyhow? Rav Yehuda Amital, famous founding Rosh Hashiva of Har Etzion, noted that the whole Egla Arufa episode is a mark against the town that let a murder victim leave with the notion that nobody cares for him. The Torah highlights the fact that part of the mitzvah of Hachnasas Orchim is the idea of liviyah, of escorting one along the way towards his or her next destination. While we don't have the obligation to escort the guests all the way to the next destination, the escort at the beginning leaves the guest with an awareness that he or she is important and that no Jew is indeed ever alone. When that does not happen and the community literally wipes its hands of the guest, then it must atone for its lack of care. Rav Elia Svei, famous Philadelphia Rosh Hashiva, added that this is seen later in history, when the donations of the Nisim, the subject of the Torah reading we just read on Hanukkah, were enumerated. While every other aspect of their donations were individualized, the wagons were shared between two Nisim, Agalah al Shnei Nisim. The reason? So Rav Elia explained that when it comes to travel, we want our fellow Jews to know that no Jew ever travels alone. Rav Amital noted that Yosef wanted Yaakov to remember that while he was separated from the family for 22 years, he was not alone. He was still committed to the principles of not leaving a soul to be abandoned. And so hence he called Yaakov to come join him in Mitzrayim, so Yosef could take care of the family and not let them perish in the famine in Canaan. The Shemi Shmuel adds that the wagons are highlighted by their wheels. And Yosef was adding another message. He was pointing out that like wheels, life also has ups and downs. And while travel away from Canaan to Mitzrayim and the Shibud and the enslavement seemed to be a step in the wrong direction, wheels turn. And when we move together, the same wheels that take us down can be the vehicles for growth and redemption, bringing us back up again. Like the unsinkable Mrs. Brown, our leaders, Yehuda and Yosef, both highlight the importance of seeing to it that one never allows the abandonment of a single Jewish soul. And perhaps this is the connection and the connection point that Yecheskel highlights in this week's Haftorah, when he highlights the two sticks, one for Yehuda and Bnei Yisrael, his friends, and one for Yosef and the house of Yisrael, his friends, who will be merged together into a united nation that will bring everyone together under one king, the shepherd, the Roa David. Rabbi Lamb once noted that the difference between Yosef's leadership and that of Yehuda was one of the difference between being a Roa, a visionary, versus being a Roa, being a shepherd. And building off his distinction, we might suggest that Yosef was a visionary. He could see the needs of each individual and where they needed to get to. But Yehuda was a shepherd who stood alongside each individual where he or she was and walked alongside him or her out of challenge, out of harm's way, and towards personal greatness. Yosef sets the course to make sure that the people know where to go to safety. Yehuda rose with them, making sure that nobody sinks alone. The wagons Yosef sent to Yaakov are still rolling throughout Jewish history. Sometimes they roll through safety. Sometimes they roll through fear. Sometimes they move us forward. Sometimes they feel like exile. But their message never changes. No Jew travels alone. In a time when anti-Semitism is once again loud and unapologetic from the right and the left, our response must be just as clear. We escort, we check in, we show up. We refuse to let another Jew feel seen or unprotected. If the wheels are turning again in difficult directions, then our task is simple. We stay together and keep pushing that wagon forward. Yehuda didn't issue statements. He stepped forward. Yosef didn't feel sympathy from far away. He built protection. Judaism doesn't allow us the luxury of saying it's not my problem. When one Jew is threatened, diminished, or afraid, then none of us are spectators. We don't watch Jews drown. We row. We stand closer. We make sure that no one feels abandoned. That's how a people survives. And that's how a people remains worthy of survival. We need clarity about who we are and where we're going. And we need the courage to row back into cold water sometimes for another Jew. Anti-Semitism tests not only our strength, but our unity. Torah demands that we do more than condemn hatred. It demands that we counter it with responsibility. Vision charts the course, yes, and Achrayus rows the boat. And Judaism insists that we never choose one without the other. Because Achrayus means knowing that when one Jew is left exposed in the cold, the rest of us We're meant to step closer, take an oar, and to row. Eh? Wishing you and yours a Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shalom to all.